99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now.
The galaxy had known fear before, but never like this. The Zareth Dominion, a colossal empire forged through centuries of conquest, was a name whispered in terror across countless worlds. They were not merely conquerors, they were annihilators. Planets that fell to the Zareth were not just subdued, they were erased, their histories wiped clean, their cultures obliterated, and their people either enslaved or exterminated. At the heart of the Dominion was the Zareth Armada, a fleet of warships so vast and powerful that it blotted out the stars wherever it traveled. These ships were not just machines of war, they were symbols of the Zareth's dominance, each one a fortress in space, bristling with weapons capable of reducing entire continents to ash. The Armada moved with a purpose, systematically advancing from one star system to the next, leaving nothing but desolation in its wake. The Zareth were a coalition of the galaxy's most fearsome species, bound together by a singular goal: absolute dominion over the cosmos. They hailed from worlds of fire and ice, from the deepest oceans and the highest peaks, each species bringing its own strengths and savagery to the empire. Over time, the Zareth had perfected the art of war, integrating the most advanced technologies and most ruthless tactics from every world they conquered. The result was an unstoppable force, a collective of the most cunning and brutal minds the galaxy had ever known. High Warlord Drathkor, the ruthless leader of the Zareth, was the embodiment of their ambition. A towering figure, his body was a fusion of organic and synthetic, a result of centuries of enhancements and modifications. His skin was as hard as the armor of his warships, his eyes a cold, glowing red, reflecting the lifeblood of the worlds he had destroyed. Drathkor was a strategist without equal, his mind honed by 1,000 battles, and his ambition was as boundless as the galaxy itself. Under Drathkor's command, the Zareth had swept through the galaxy like a plague. No world had been able to resist their onslaught. Even the most advanced civilizations, with technologies that dwarfed those of Earth, had fallen before the Zareth. They were a force of nature, a hurricane of destruction that could not be reasoned with or halted. When the Zareth scouts first discovered Earth, they were unimpressed. It was a small blue planet on the edge of a spiral arm of the Milky Way, orbiting a mediocre star. The inhabitants, humans, were deemed primitive by Zareth standards, barely able to venture beyond their own moon. Earth was classified as a Category 4 planet, one of the least advanced in the galaxy. Drathkor saw Earth as little more than a stepping stone, a minor conquest that would add to the Dominion's ever-growing list of victories. The planet's resources were plentiful, its strategic location in the galaxy convenient, and its people weak. The decision to invade was made swiftly, with Drathkor ordering a full-scale assault. The Earth would be crushed beneath the might of the Zareth, and its people would be forgotten as all others before them. The invasion fleet was assembled with brutal efficiency. Hundreds of warships, each one a titan in its own right, were dispatched to Earth. Among them were the Behemoth-class dreadnoughts, ships so large that they could block out the sun, their hulls bristling with weapons capable of obliterating entire cities in a single strike. Accompanying them were swarms of fighter craft, agile and deadly, designed to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies before delivering the killing blow. As the fleet approached Earth, its sheer size triggered panic among the few human astronomers who detected it. But the warning came too late. The Zareth Armada emerged from the void of space like a storm, their ships descending upon Earth with terrifying speed. The invasion had begun. In the skies over Earth, the warships cast long shadows over the land. From New York to Tokyo, from Moscow to Sydney, the world watched in horror as these colossal vessels blotted out the sun, their presence signaling the end of days. The Zareth were not subtle. They wanted humanity to know fear before the end came. The first strikes were devastating. Beams of energy hotter than the surface of the sun lanced out from the Zareth warships, carving through Earth's defenses with surgical precision. Entire fleets of human aircraft were incinerated before they could launch a counterattack. Missile silos were vaporized in seconds, and the most fortified bunkers were reduced to molten craters. The Zareth had no need for diplomacy or negotiation. They communicated only through destruction. On the ground, the devastation was unimaginable. Cities that had stood for centuries were leveled in minutes. Skyscrapers crumbled, bridges collapsed, and millions of lives were lost in the blink of an eye. The Earth's greatest powers were paralyzed, their military might rendered useless against the invaders' superior technology. The governments of the world scrambled to respond, but it was as if the Zareth had anticipated every move. Their war machines were relentless, their tactics flawless, and their resolve unbreakable. The world was plunged into chaos. News networks broadcast images of destruction and despair, showing scenes of devastation that defied belief. People fled their homes in terror, seeking refuge from a foe that seemed unstoppable. But there was nowhere to run, no place on Earth that the Zareth could not reach. As the hours turned into days, it became clear that humanity was facing extinction. The Zareth, confident in their victory, began the next phase of their invasion, the systematic harvesting of Earth's resources. Massive machines descended from the warships, drilling into the planet's crust, extracting minerals and elements with cold efficiency. The Earth, once vibrant and full of life, was being stripped bare, its riches taken to fuel the expansion of the Dominion. But as the Zareth began their pillaging, a small resistance began to form. In the midst of the chaos, a coalition of the world's remaining military forces, scientists, and leaders gathered in secret. They knew that conventional warfare would not be enough to defeat the Zareth, and they began to search for a different kind of weapon. A weapon that could turn the tide against an enemy that seemed invincible. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, in forgotten bunkers and ancient ruins, they searched for answers. They scoured old legends and myths, looking for anything that might help them in their darkest hour. And it was there, in the depths of history, that they found the first clues of a power long thought to be a mere legend, a power that could give humanity a fighting chance. As the Zareth continued their assault, unaware of the forces they had awakened, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The invincible armada had come to Earth, expecting an easy victory. But they were about to learn that some worlds, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, could unleash hell when pushed to the brim. The invasion of Earth was swift, brutal, and terrifying. The Zareth warships hovered in the skies like harbingers of doom, their ominous presence striking fear into the hearts of billions. From the moment they arrived, the Earth was plunged into a state of panic and chaos. News networks struggled to keep up with the unfolding catastrophe, broadcasting images of destruction that were as surreal as they were horrifying. Governments across the globe were caught off guard, despite years of preparation for the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. But nothing had prepared them for this. The sheer scale and ferocity of the Zareth assault overwhelmed every defense humanity had painstakingly built. The world's most powerful nations, those who had believed themselves invulnerable, suddenly found their military might insignificant against the advanced technology of the invaders. In the United States, the president convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council in a fortified bunker deep beneath Washington, D.C. The room buzzed with tension as generals, advisors, and scientists scrambled to devise a plan of action. Satellite images displayed the horrifying reality on large screens. Cities across the globe were under attack, their landmarks reduced to rubble, their people fleeing in sheer panic. Mr. President, General Adams, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, began with a grim expression. Our forces are engaging the enemy, but it's like trying to stop a tidal wave with a sandcastle. Their ships are equipped with energy weapons that we can't even begin to comprehend. Our aircraft are being shot down before they can even get close. What about our nuclear arsenal? The president asked, desperation creeping into his voice. General Adams hesitated. We've deployed several tactical nukes against their smaller ships, but they've been completely ineffective. Their shields are impenetrable. It's as if they anticipated every move we'd make. In the Pentagon, similar scenes were playing out. The world's brightest military minds were stumped. Every strategy they devised, every countermeasure they deployed, was met with the same result: total failure. It was as if the Zareth had already fought this battle 1,000 times before, their tactics refined to perfection against every conceivable defense. In Europe, the situation was no better. London, Paris, Berlin, cities that had stood for centuries, were now under siege. The Zareth warships, vast and menacing, loomed over these metropolises, unleashing waves of destruction with surgical precision. The Eiffel Tower, the Colosseum, and the Brandenburg Gate, symbols of human achievement and history, were reduced to twisted metal and ash in mere moments. In Asia, the story was the same. Beijing, Tokyo, and New Delhi, teeming with millions of people, were turned into war zones. The Great Wall of China, a testament to human endurance and ingenuity, crumbled under the onslaught of the Zareth energy beams. In Tokyo, The iconic Shibuya crossing, usually packed with people, was now a scene of carnage, with buildings collapsing and fires raging. As the world burned, the desperation of humanity grew. In an underground bunker in Moscow, Russian military officials argued over the best course of action, their voices rising in frustration. The Kremlin, once a symbol of power and stability, was now a smoldering ruin, its iconic domes lying shattered on the ground. "We must retaliate with everything we have," one general shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "And what good will that do?" another countered. "Every missile we launch is intercepted before it even gets close. We're fighting ghosts." In the depths of the Amazon rainforest, where the Tsareth had begun to strip the earth of its resources, a different kind of battle was raging. Indigenous tribes who had lived in harmony with the land for millennia now faced the horrors of the alien invaders. The Tsareth's extraction machines tore through the dense foliage, reducing the ancient trees to mere fuel for their empire. But the tribes did not surrender without a fight. Using knowledge passed down through generations, they set traps and launched guerrilla attacks, though they knew their efforts were in vain. Back in the United States, as military options dwindled, the president authorized the deployment of specialized teams to investigate the alien technology in hopes of finding a weakness. These teams, composed of the best and brightest from various fields, scientists, engineers, and intelligence operatives, were humanity's last hope. One such team was led by Dr. Emily Carter, a brilliant physicist specializing in quantum mechanics. She and her team were dispatched to the Nevada desert, where the remnants of a downed Tsareth scout ship had been recovered. The site was heavily guarded by the military, with soldiers on high alert, nervously watching the skies. As Dr. Carter and her team approached the wreckage, they were struck by the alien nature of the craft. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, organic yet metallic, sleek yet imposing. The ship seemed to pulse with a faint energy, as if it were still alive. This is beyond anything we've ever encountered," Dr. Carter whispered, her voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. "If we can understand how this ship works, we might have a chance." The team quickly set to work, analyzing the wreckage, searching for clues, for anything that could give humanity an edge. But the technology was baffling, operating on principles that defied the known laws of physics. It was as if the Tsareth had harnessed the very fabric of reality itself. Days passed, and the situation on the ground grew increasingly dire. More cities fell, more lives were lost. The Tsareth seemed unstoppable, their war machines tearing through Earth's defenses with relentless efficiency. The world was on the brink of total collapse. But then, in the depths of despair, a breakthrough came. Dr. Carter and her team discovered something extraordinary, a power source within the ship that seemed to be a quantum singularity, a micro-black hole harnessed for energy. It was both a weapon and a fuel, something that could either destroy or empower depending on how it was used. This could be it," Dr. Carter said, her eyes wide with realization. "If we can replicate this, we might be able to fight back. But it's dangerous, unpredictable. It could destroy us as easily as it could save us." With no other options, the president authorized a bold and risky plan. Using the knowledge gained from the wreckage, a new weapon was to be developed, a weapon that could potentially turn the tide of the invasion. But time was running out. The Tsareth were growing bolder, their grip tightening around the throat of humanity. In a desperate gamble, the coalition of the world's remaining forces agreed to launch a coordinated strike, using every resource at their disposal to buy time for Dr. Carter and her team to complete their work. It was a suicidal mission, but the stakes were too high to hesitate. As the final preparations were made, a sense of grim determination settled over those who remained. This was it, the last stand of humanity. The world held its breath as the operation began, the skies once again filled with the roar of engines and the flash of explosions. But this time, there was something different, a faint glimmer of hope amid the darkness. The world's armies, battered and broken, launched a massive counteroffensive against the Tsareth, throwing everything they had into the fray. The fighting was fierce, brutal, with no quarter given on either side. The streets of Earth became battlegrounds, the skies filled with fire. But just as it seemed that all hope was lost, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Carter and her team, working around the clock, managed to harness the power of the quantum singularity. It was unstable, dangerous, but it was ready. In a final desperate act, the new weapon was unleashed. A burst of energy, unlike anything the world had ever seen, erupted from a secret base deep within the Rocky Mountains. It tore through the sky, a beam of pure, concentrated power, aimed directly at the heart of the Zareth armada. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The beam struck the flagship of the Zareth fleet, shattering its shields and piercing its hull. For the first time since the invasion began, a Zareth warship was destroyed. The shockwave of the explosion rippled through the sky, causing smaller ships to falter and crash. The tide of the battle began to turn. The Zareth, caught off guard by the sudden and devastating counterattack, hesitated. And in that hesitation, humanity found its chance. The remaining forces of Earth rallied, launching a ferocious counteroffensive that pushed the Zareth back. But the battle was far from over. The Zareth regrouped, their forces still vast and powerful. They would not be defeated so easily. As the war raged on, Dr. Carter and her team continued their work, knowing that this was only the beginning. The world had bought itself time, but at a terrible cost. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead, and the Earth itself was scarred. But in that moment of victory, however fleeting, a spark of hope ignited across the globe. Humanity had struck back, and the Zareth had bled. And as the sun set on the smoldering ruins of the world's great cities, one thing became clear. Earth was not just another conquest. The Zareth had come to take the planet by force, but they had awakened something far more dangerous, a resolve that would not be broken, a fury that would not be quenched. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The momentary victory against the Zareth fleet had given humanity a glimmer of hope, but the realization of the colossal task ahead weighed heavily on everyone. The devastation was widespread, and the remnants of Earth's defenses were hanging by a thread. Yet amid the despair there was a growing sense of resolve, a determination to fight on, no matter the cost. The discovery of the quantum singularity had shifted the balance, if only slightly, and now Earth's leaders knew they needed something even more powerful to secure lasting survival. The coalition of world leaders, military strategists, and scientists convened in what remained of the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, deep beneath the city in a hidden bunker. The war room was filled with tense faces, many of them bruised and battered from the weeks of relentless assault. Maps of the devastated Earth were strewn across tables, with holographic displays showing the latest intelligence on Zareth movements. The question on everyone's mind was the same: what could be done to ensure Earth's survival? Dr. Emily Carter, the physicist who had spearheaded the breakthrough with the quantum singularity, was summoned to the war room. She had barely slept in days, her mind racing with new ideas, possibilities, and dangers. As she entered the room, the eyes of the world's most powerful people turned to her, hoping for answers. "Dr. Carter," the President of the United States began, his voice hoarse from stress and exhaustion, "your team has given us a fighting chance, but we all know it's not enough. The Zareth will regroup, and when they do, they'll come back with a vengeance. We need something more. Something that can end this once and for all." Dr. Carter nodded, her expression serious. "I understand, Mr. President. The weapon we created was only a temporary solution, a patch on a much larger problem. But there is something ancient, something powerful that we might be able to use." She hesitated as if struggling to find the right words. The room was silent, the weight of her next words pressing on everyone present. "In my research," she continued, "I came across references to an artifact, something buried deep within our planet. It's mentioned in myths and legends across multiple cultures, but it's always been dismissed as just that, myth. However, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that these myths might be rooted in something real. I believe it's an ancient, incredibly powerful entity, something that predates human civilization itself. We call it the Eye of Chaos." A murmur spread through the room, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. The Secretary General of the United Nations leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "The Eye of Chaos? You're suggesting we rely on a myth to save us?" Dr. Carter shook her head. "Not a myth, a relic. If my calculations are correct and the data we've gathered aligns with the ancient texts, the Eye of Chaos is not just a relic. It's a source of unimaginable power. It's been dormant for millennia, but it could be the key to turning the tide against the Zareth." The leaders exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of using an ancient unknown power to combat the Zareth was both terrifying and alluring. The Prime Minister of Japan, her voice calm but firm, broke the silence. "Where is this Eye of Chaos, Dr. Carter?" Dr. Carter took a deep breath. "It's buried beneath the Arctic ice, far beneath the surface in a cavern that's been sealed for thousands of years. But accessing it won't be easy, and there's no guarantee we can control it once we do. The Eye of Chaos, according to the legends, is sentient, a being of pure energy that can bend reality itself. If we awaken it, there's a very real possibility it could destroy us along with the Zareth. The room fell silent once more, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The leaders were faced with an impossible decision: do nothing and risk annihilation at the hands of the Zareth, or take a gamble on an ancient power that could either be their salvation or their doom. Finally, the president spoke, his voice steady. "We don't have a choice. If there's even a chance that this Eye of Chaos can help us, we have to take it. We'll prepare an expedition immediately." Dr. Carter nodded, her mind already racing with the logistics of the mission. "I'll need a team of experts, geologists, engineers, and most importantly, people who understand the risks. We'll also need to secure the area from any potential Zareth interference. They've been monitoring our every move, and we can't afford to let them find out what we're up to." The president turned to General Adams. "Make the necessary preparations. This operation is top priority. The fate of the planet depends on it." Within hours, the preparations were underway. A team was assembled consisting of the best and brightest from various fields. The mission was dubbed Operation Pandora, a fitting name given the uncertainty of what they were about to unleash. The team was transported to a secret military base in Greenland, where they would embark on the final leg of their journey to the Arctic. As the team made their way to the frozen wasteland, the tension was palpable. Each member understood the gravity of their mission, the weight of the world resting on their shoulders. The Arctic was a desolate and unforgiving place, a vast expanse of ice and snow that stretched as far as the eye could see. The cold was biting, and the winds howled like a banshee, but the team pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the future of humanity depended on their success. After days of grueling travel, the team finally reached the coordinates Dr. Carter had calculated. The entrance to the cavern was hidden beneath layers of ice and snow, sealed away by the passage of time. It took hours of careful excavation, using advanced drilling equipment to finally breach the entrance. The team descended into the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the gloom as they ventured deeper into the earth. The cavern was vast, its walls lined with strange ancient symbols that none of the team members could decipher. The air was thick with an almost tangible energy, a hum that seemed to resonate through the very bones of those who entered. At the center of the cavern, they found it, the Eye of Chaos. It was a sight that took their breath away. The eye was a massive, pulsating sphere of energy, floating above an ancient pedestal. It radiated a brilliant shifting light, cycling through colors that defied description. The air around it crackled with electricity, and the temperature fluctuated wildly, from blistering heat to bone-chilling cold. Dr. Carter approached the eye cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel its power, its sentience, as if it were aware of their presence. The legends had not done it justice. This was something far beyond human understanding, something that had existed since time immemorial. "Is it alive?" one of the team members whispered, his voice trembling. Dr. Carter didn't answer immediately. She reached out with her instruments, carefully taking readings, but the data made no sense. The eye was operating on principles that defied everything she knew about physics and energy. "It's not alive in the way we understand," she finally replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's aware, it's conscious, and it's powerful, more powerful than anything we've ever encountered." The team stood in awe, mesmerized by the sight before them. But they knew they had little time to act. The Zareth were relentless, and it was only a matter of time before they detected the energy signature of the eye. "We need to harness its power," Dr. Carter said, breaking the silence. "But we have to be careful. If we push it too far, we could destroy ourselves along with the Zareth. This isn't just a weapon, it's a force of nature." The team quickly set to work, setting up the equipment they had brought with them. They carefully connected the eye to a containment and transfer system designed to channel its energy into a weapon that could be used against the Zareth. But as they worked, the eye began to react, its light intensifying, its energy pulsing with increasing frequency. Dr. Carter could feel it. The eye was aware of what they were doing. It was as if it were testing them, probing their intentions. The ancient legends spoke of the eye's unpredictable nature, its capacity for both creation and destruction. They were playing with forces far beyond their comprehension. As the team completed their work, the cavern was suddenly filled with a deep, resonant sound. A voice, though not in any language they knew. It echoed through their minds, a message from the Eye itself. "Who dares awaken me?" The team froze, their eyes wide with fear. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her heart racing. "We are the last hope of our world," she said, her voice trembling. "We seek your power to defend our planet from invaders who wish to destroy us." The Eye pulsed, its light flaring brightly. "Power is not given, it is taken. You risk all for this." Dr. Carter swallowed hard. "We have no choice. Our world is on the brink of annihilation. If we do nothing, we will be destroyed. But if we use your power, we might have a chance." There was a long, agonizing pause. Then the Eye's light dimmed slightly, its energy calming. "Very well. But know this. My power is not to be wielded lightly. Once unleashed, it cannot be controlled. The consequences are yours to bear." With that, the Eye's energy began to flow into the containment system, the machinery humming to life as it absorbed the immense power. The team watched in awe as the impossible became reality. An ancient force older than time itself was now in their hands. But even as they completed the transfer, the words of the Eye lingered in their minds. They had unlocked a power that could save humanity, but they had also awakened something far more dangerous. The Eye of Chaos was now a part of them, its fate intertwined with that of the Earth. As the team prepared to leave the cavern, Dr. Carter took one last look at the Eye, still floating serenely above its pedestal. She knew they had taken a dangerous gamble, one that could either save the world or doom it. Outside, the winds howled across the Arctic landscape as the team emerged into the pale light of day. They had accomplished their mission, but the true test was yet to come. The Eye of Chaos was now in their possession, but could they wield its power without destroying themselves in the process? As they boarded their transport back to the mainland, the skies above them began to darken. The Zareth were coming, and the final battle for Earth was about to begin. Humanity had unlocked its hidden power, but the cost of using it was still unknown. The Eye of Chaos had been unleashed, and now the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The air over Earth hung heavy with anticipation. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The Zareth Armada, regrouped and more determined than ever, began their final approach to Earth. They had underestimated humanity once, but they would not make the same mistake again. High Warlord Drathkor, seething with anger at the losses his fleet had suffered, ordered a full-scale assault. Earth would be obliterated, its surface scorched until nothing remained but ash. From the bridge of his flagship, the Scourge of Worlds, Drathkor watched as his warships descended through the planet's atmosphere, their shadows casting an ominous gloom over the cities below. His eyes, glowing with a cold, malevolent light, narrowed as he surveyed the world that had dared to resist. "This planet will be a lesson to the galaxy," he muttered, his voice dripping with contempt. "No one defies the Zareth and survives." On Earth, the coalition of world leaders and military commanders had gathered in the most secure bunker they had left, a facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The tension in the room was palpable as they watched the screens showing the approaching Zareth fleet. The time for plans and strategies was over. Now it was all about survival. Dr. Emily Carter stood at the center of the room, her face drawn with exhaustion but her eyes burning with determination. The Eye of Chaos, the ancient and powerful artifact they had unearthed in the Arctic, was now in their possession. But the question remained, could they control it, or would it destroy them all? "The Zareth are closing in," General Adams reported, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "They'll reach us within the hour. We need to act now." Dr. Carter nodded, her mind racing. The weapon they had constructed using the power of the Eye of Chaos was unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. It was capable of unleashing a wave of energy that could warp reality itself, but it was also incredibly unstable. The Eye had warned them of the dangers, and now, as the moment of truth approached, those warnings echoed in her mind. "We have one shot at this," she said, addressing the room. "If we use the Eye's power, we could wipe out the Zareth fleet, but we could also destroy ourselves in the process. The Eye is unpredictable, and once we unleash it, there's no going back." The president, standing beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "We understand the risks, Dr. Carter, but we have no choice. We can't let the Zareth take this planet. Do it." Dr. Carter took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She turned to the control panel in front of her, where the Eye of Chaos was connected to the weapon's targeting system. The power of the Eye surged through the machinery, causing the entire facility to tremble as it came online. The lights flickered, and a low hum filled the air, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. Outside, the Zareth fleet began their assault. Beams of energy lanced from their warships, striking the Earth's surface with devastating force. Cities that had already been battered were now obliterated, reduced to craters in the blink of an eye. The ground shook and the skies burned as the full fury of the Zareth descended upon the planet. But even as the destruction rained down, the weapon charged. The Eye of Chaos pulsed with an eerie light, its energy building to a crescendo. Dr. Carter's fingers hovered over the controls, her heart pounding. She could feel the Eye's consciousness, its awareness of what was about to happen. It was as if the Eye was testing her, waiting to see if humanity truly deserved the power it was about to wield. In the sky above, the Zareth flagship, Scourge of Worlds, loomed large. Drathkor, confident in his victory, ordered the final strike. "Fire at will," he commanded, his voice cold and unforgiving. "Leave nothing but ashes." As the Zareth prepared to deliver the killing blow, Dr. Carter made her decision. She activated the weapon. A pulse of energy erupted from the Rocky Mountains, visible from space as a brilliant flash of light that spread across the planet. The energy wave, fueled by the Eye of Chaos, expanded rapidly, warping reality as it went. The fabric of space-time rippled and bent under the sheer force of the blast, creating distortions that twisted and stretched the very air around it. The Zareth warships caught in the path of the wave were torn apart. Their shields, which had been impenetrable to human weapons, disintegrated in an instant. The hulls of the ships twisted and buckled as the wave passed through them, their advanced technology rendered useless by the raw, chaotic power of the Eye. The smaller ships exploded in bursts of fire and debris, while the larger ones were ripped apart piece by piece, their crews lost to the void. On the Scourge of Worlds, Drathkor watched in disbelief as his fleet was annihilated. The power unleashed by the humans was beyond anything he had ever encountered. His eyes widened in shock as the wave approached his flagship, warping the space around it. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice trembling with fear for the first time in centuries. The wave struck the Scourge of Worlds with the force of a supernova. The ship's hull buckled and twisted, and the energy within it ignited in a massive explosion that shook the heavens. Drathkor, the once invincible warlord, was consumed by the very power he had sought to destroy, his last moments spent in a futile attempt to comprehend what had gone wrong. But as the Zareth fleet was obliterated, the energy wave continued to expand, threatening to consume the Earth itself. The power of the Eye of Chaos, now fully unleashed, was beyond anyone's control. The ground trembled, and the sky darkened as reality began to break down around the epicenter of the blast. Inside the bunker, alarms blared as the facility shook violently. Dr. Carter struggled to maintain control, but it was clear that the situation was spiraling out of hand. The Eye's power was too great, too unpredictable. The weapon they had created to save humanity was now on the verge of destroying it. "We need to shut it down," General Adams shouted over the din, his face pale with fear. "I'm trying," Dr. Carter yelled back, her fingers flying over the controls. But the systems were unresponsive, overwhelmed by the sheer energy coursing through them. The Eye of Chaos was no longer just a weapon. It was a force of nature, and it was beyond their control. As the energy wave continued to spread, cracks began to appear in the ground, splitting the Earth open. The sky above swirled with unnatural colors, and the very air seemed to shimmer with the intensity of the power being unleashed. It was as if the planet itself was being torn apart. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Dr. Carter made a desperate decision. She reached into the containment field surrounding the Eye, her hand trembling as she grasped the ancient artifact. The moment her fingers touched its surface, a shockwave of energy surged through her body, causing her to cry out in pain. But she held on, using every ounce of her willpower to contain the chaos within the Eye. "You have to stop this," she shouted, her voice filled with both determination and desperation. "We can't control you. Please, if there's anything left of humanity's future, you must stop." The Eye pulsed violently in her grasp, its light flaring brighter than ever. For a moment it seemed as if the entire planet would be consumed by its power, but then slowly the energy began to recede. The wave of destruction halted, the cracks in the Earth stopped spreading, and the sky gradually began to clear. Dr. Carter could feel the Eye's consciousness within her mind, a vast ancient intelligence that was far beyond human understanding. It was not driven by malice or cruelty, but by a force of will that transcended any mortal concept. The Eye had tested humanity, and in that moment, it made its decision. The light of the Eye dimmed, and the energy within it stabilized. The chaos that had threatened to engulf the world slowly dissipated, leaving the Earth scarred but intact. The war was over. The Zareth had been defeated, their fleet destroyed, and their empire shattered. But the victory had come at a great cost. The Earth was ravaged, its cities in ruins, its people decimated. Millions had died in the conflict, and those who survived were left to pick up the pieces of a world forever changed. The Eye of Chaos, now dormant once more, had returned to its slumber, leaving humanity to determine its own future. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving leaders of the world gathered to reflect on what had happened. The victory against the Zareth was bittersweet. They had survived the onslaught of the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known, but the price had been steep. The Earth was no longer the world it once was, and the scars of the war would be felt for generations to come. Dr. Carter, now hailed as a hero, stood on the devastated plains outside what had once been the Rocky Mountains, looking up at the sky. The stars were just beginning to reappear, the first signs of normalcy returning to a planet that had been on the brink of destruction. As she stared into the cosmos, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The Eye of Chaos had been a double-edged sword, a power that had saved them but could just as easily have destroyed them. The experience had shown her the fragility of life, the thin line between existence and annihilation, but it had also shown her the resilience of humanity. Despite the odds, despite the overwhelming power of their enemies, they had fought back. They had survived. And now, they had a chance to rebuild. The galaxy would never be the same. The Zareth Dominion, once feared across the stars, was now a memory, a cautionary tale of hubris and the dangers of underestimating those you seek to conquer. Earth had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there was always hope, always a chance to fight back. As the survivors of Earth began the long process of rebuilding, they knew that they had earned their place among the stars. They had faced the worst the galaxy had to offer and emerged victorious. But they also knew that they had been given a second chance, one that they would not squander. And so, with the dawn of a new day, the people of Earth looked to the future with hope, determined to forge a new path in a galaxy that would never forget the day they had unleashed hell and survived. The Eye of Chaos remained buried deep within the Earth, its power once again dormant, waiting for the day it might be called upon again. But for now, the world could breathe, knowing that the greatest threat they had ever faced was gone, and the future was theirs to shape.